There is this hidden, secret, invisible counterpart to the visible world that we're familiar with, and that it has a whole set of rules and laws, similar to the laws that we have kind of discovered in the invisible world. Daoism explains what those laws, those rules and laws are, how the invisible world works.
Welcome to this episode of On Emergence, a podcast on what it takes to be a human being. My name is Laura Sagan, and I'm your host and a fellow human being. Today, I'm excited to have Lugh here with me in his lovely mountain house up in the Sacred Valley here in Pisac, Peru. And I'm excited to talk to you, Lugh, about Daoism, a concept that I came across in the teachings of Alan Watts the most. And most of all, I'm just excited to learn from you because you educate people, especially in the modern context, how to practice and cultivate that inner sense of Dao within them. So I'm going to give a word over to you to do an introduction more about the work that you do.
I am specializing in teaching the philosophy, science, and practice of Daoism, but specifically to kind of lift it somewhat from its traditional jargon, which is, it's a worldview that comes from China. I've been practicing for almost 20 years now, and so through practice, I've developed an understanding of exactly what Daoism is, and I've developed a certain way of explaining it that makes sense to the modern ear, to the Western ear. And that's primarily what I want to do, is to make this ancient philosophy, these ancient practices, relevant to people living in the modern era, because one of the primary aspects of the Tao is that it's always self-renovating, always changing. I mean, it is change. It is what remains consistent throughout change. And so if you lose track of it, if you get too lost in its traditional trappings and you don't bring it into the modern era, then you're losing it. It will slip through your fingers like a fish. So it always has to be re-examined, brought up to the present moment, or else you're going to lose it. So, and that's exciting because it's not something that, it's not like a philosophy that I can just kind of explain to you one time and you'll get all the concept. It's a living philosophy. So you have to stick with it and watch how it reveals itself over time in the context of your life, but also in the context of the macrocosm. So it includes, historical change and technological change, everything. And if we don't keep pace with it, then we're in danger of losing it. We're in danger of losing track of the flow. And that's something that I've been called through my 20 years of practice to bring my experience and to share with people who might not be from China or might not identify with Daoism and all its kind of traditional trappings. Yeah.
So that's a very intriguing introduction because I already have questions.
All right, yep. Bring it on. I love questions.
First of all, could you explain, and from very limited reading that I did on Taoism, is that it's almost ineffable and explainable, needs to be experienced and needs to be felt concept. But if you were to explain it to someone who is just coming across that concept, which words and phrases and experiences that you would bring into?
My definition of Taoism, and this is how I explain it, it's not necessarily in any books or anything, but to make it make sense to people, is I call Taoism the science of the invisible. So in the Western world, over the past several hundred years, we've developed a very sophisticated science of the visible. So that's a science, what we call science in the West, is the science of the world that we can detect and interact with the five senses. So, sight, smell, taste, hearing, touch. But that limits us to only phenomena which can be experienced external to us through the five senses. For the last several thousand years in China, but in fact, not just in China, pretty much every single indigenous culture that I'm aware of, that I've had experience with, which is primarily the Mayan cosmovision and now increasingly the Incan cosmovision. The more that I learn about them, the more that I realize that every culture had their own understanding of the science of the invisible, and that the way they line up is uncanny. They're almost identical. The only difference is that in China, that this science of the invisible was allowed to over thousands of years of kind of uninterrupted development. So if we understand that Daoism is the science of the invisible, how do we do this science? So in order to do science, it's, we have to study it, we have to experience it. And Daoism really puts a lot of emphasis on firsthand individual experience. I'm sure most people watching this, including yourself, are aware of the Yin Yang symbol, right? But most people are very familiar with that symbol, but they don't know what it is. It has a very specific name that for some reason hasn't, and most people know what that name is. They just don't know that that is the name of that symbol. So this symbol, the Yin Yang symbol, and it does depict yin and yang, these energies. It's called the Tai-Chi. So we all know, like, old people doing these slow methodical movements in parks, and that we know that is Tai-Chi. But actually, the full name of that is the martial arts Tai Chi Chuan, or Tai Chi fist. It just means a style of martial arts that makes use of that symbol, right? So that is the Tai Chi. That Yin Yang symbol is the Tai Chi, and it explains something extremely important, fundamental to the science and the invisible that I'm talking about. We mostly think of it as a dualistic symbol. When you're looking at it, it's training you to see both sides of reality, not just the visible side, but the visible and the invisible. There is this hidden, secret, invisible counterpart to the visible world that we're familiar with, and that it has a whole set of rules and laws, similar to the laws that we have kind of discovered in the invisible world. And that Daoism explains what those rules and laws are, how the invisible world works. And funnily enough, it is the kind of upside down, inside out version of the visible world. So in the visible world, we have many, many different things that we can detect through the five senses. It's called the world of the 1,000 things, but it's like obviously way more than that. So we call this, in Daoist terminology, the fire world, the visible world that most everybody spends their entire life, at least in Western countries, in your northern countries, from birth to death. We spend our entire life in this fire world, in this visible world. Why is it called the fire world? Well, it borrows this image from the visible world, fire. Fire makes things visible. So, for one,
Of course, illuminates.
Exactly. Okay. So if you put a fire in a dark room, you're going to see things. It's going to reveal the visible world to you. But also, fire consumes whatever is set fire to. It will consume that. So it's also the world of finite things. So things that have a beginning, a middle, and the end. It's the finite world. Everything we see around us has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So it's the world of the visible world is the world of finite things, different qualities that we could detect with the five senses that are external to the human body. There is external to our observation that are finite. So the invisible world is, like I said, it's the inside out, upside down version of the visible world. So that's the dark part of the yin yang symbol, right? And we call that the water world. Water is always contiguous, right? If you put two bodies of water together, they'll instantly become one body of water. And that's because in the fire world, it's the world of many, many different things. In the invisible world, there is only one thing. There's only one thing. What is that one thing? Energy, or what we call Qi. So we can talk about many, many different types of Qi. There's, there's fire Qi, water Qi, wood Qi, there's grain Qi, there's ghost Qi. There's a million different types of Qi within this science of the invisible that we call Daoism. But really, ultimately, there's only one Qi, and that all these terms just describe different dynamics of energy, right? So fire Qi is Qi that rises up. Water Qi is Qi that sinks down. Wood Qi is Qi that expands out. And metal Qi is Qi that condenses in. So these are four of the five elements of Daoism. But really, we're borrowing terms from the visible world to describe the different dynamics, the different thing that this one energy does. So it's not five different Qis, it's one Qi. We're just describing its fundamental dynamics. So I described four. The fifth one is earth, and that's Qi that's just resting, staying still. And it's also permanent. You can't really destroy water. It only changes states. It could go from ice to liquid to steam, But it's, as far as I know, you can't just absolutely annihilate it. So just like the external fire world is full of finite things that have a beginning, middle, and end, the world of energy does not. It's eternal. So it just changes states, just changes, and that these two worlds are separate, but that they are continually interacting with each other and changing each other. So in Taoism, we try to become conscious, just like when we're looking at that Yin Yang symbol, that Tai Chi. It's really not dualistic, it's tripartite, because the third part is us looking at it. It is through our subjective experience of, and what we try to cultivate, a balanced experience, lived experience with the visible and the invisible world. When we see both of them equally well, then that, when they're balanced, then that activates the third term, which is our subjectivity, our ability to witness both sides equally. And when that happens, and when you achieve that, something very special happens, which is what we're looking for in Daoism. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, I am blown away by the explanation of the yin. Definitely my perspective of it has changed.
Good. Then that's my job. That's what I try to do.
The moment when you are able to witness the duality or the non-duality of the visible duality, is that the same? Is that along the lines of the enlightenment that is referred in the yogic, in the yogic tradition? There's kind of like when you're able to observe both worlds at the same time. Is that similar along the lines, or?
Yeah, you can call it non-duality. Well, non-duality comes from duality. So that's the Tai Chi. It's Tai Chi literally is usually translated as the grand ultimate, right? That polarity. And so when you see those old people doing those exercises in the park, they're practicing something called Tai Chi Chuan, which literally means grand ultimate boxing or grand ultimate fists, which is, it seems very gentle, but it's very, very, ultimately, it's a very, very powerful martial art. But what grand ultimate really means is polarity, furthest ultimate polarity. So in Taoism, we don't take sides. We like polarity and we also like unity. But there's a dynamic relationship with those two things. You can't have unity without polarity, and you can't have polarity without unity. Those two concepts need each other. What is ultimate polarity? What is the Tai Chi? Well, it's all about this one energy, and it likes to do certain things. And one of those things it likes to do is to explore polarity. So it likes to forget that unity, separate into two, and those two sides just run off into either direction. But they reach a point where if they were to continue to separate, they would have to tear themselves apart from each other. And that can never happen. It's just impossible. That's just impossible. If the universe would separate into two, and it would all reality would collapse. So what energy likes to do is it likes to explore this polarity and forget about its unity. One side forgets about the other. They run off in two directions. But then once they reach that furthest possible polarity, which we call the Tai Chi, they have to turn around and come back, remember each other, and come back into unity. And that's the second important concept in Taoism, which is called Uji, which means no polarity. Tai-Ji, Tai means ultimate or furthest possible, greatest extent. Ji means polarity. And those two states exist at the same time. So that return to unity from polarity, that is the Tao, right? So in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu talks about the Tao is the return to unity from polarity. And that's what all life is. So let's look at some examples of this Tai Chi that we see every single day whenever we wake up. Wherever we go, the most common symbol is masculine, feminine. So there's this polarity, masculine, feminine separate, and then they come together through sexual union. That's how the invisible world works. It separates and comes back into unity. It's all the energy of polarity and then union, right? Coming back into union. So the the kind of most fundamental Tai Chis or polarities we see every day, and that what makes life possible, is the Tai Chi between heaven and earth. The earth is pure yin energy, and the sky is pure yang energy. They couldn't become any more separate. They're completely polarized from each other, and they would remain separate if there was no life. So that's what life is from a Taoist point of view. Life is what is created when that primordial separation of yin and yang start to return together and sexually interact with each other to create life. So polarity creates energy. When there's polarity, there's energy. Just like a battery, we need polarity. And that energy is created when those two poles come back together. And we witness that coming back to unity. That is the phenomenon of life. So all life, if you've noticed, takes place directly on the threshold between this pure yin of earth and this pure yang of heaven. Every tree is the manifestation of the lovemaking, the coming back into unity of the pure yin of the earth and the pure yang of heaven, right? So there's something in all living things that can pull the qi up from the earth when otherwise it would just stay there. So there's something in your body, there's something in the body of all living things that can lift that qi up into it. And there's something in every living thing that can pull the heaven qi down when it would otherwise just want to stay up. And to bring those two, that primordial polarity back into unity. And that is what life is. All of life is the gradual coming back, slow, painstaking coming back to unity of this primordial polarity between heaven and earth. And the place where that unity is manifested in its highest form is the human body. So all life is the coming together of this unity, but it's the human body from the Daoist point of view is the microcosm of the Tao. It contains all the secrets of the Tao because it is the manifestation of this coming back, the sexual union of heaven and earth. That the Tao is all coming towards the creation of human life. What I like to say often is what the Bible is to Christianity, the human body is to the Tao. All what the sages have discovered about this invisible world, about the science of Daoism, the science of the invisible, was done through quieting the mind and observing the body. The body is the microcosm of the Tao, and if we take a break from the mind telling the body what to do on a daily basis, like get me that, bring me this. We quiet the mind, we make the mind yin and the body yang. We start to listen to the body. We sink our awareness inside of the body. Then eventually the body will start to reveal all the secrets of the Tao, all the secrets of the invisible world, because it is the walking, living embodiment of the Tao. It's the highest level of perfection that the Tao, of this slow coming back into unity over the course of evolutionary time, it's revealing itself through the human body.
Why do we forget? Why would we not stay in unity? Why unity has, and I have my own speculative answers that I've kind of gathered across the time, but when you were talking about it, is that there's a pull for polarity and there is a pull for the magnetism coming together. Why, according to the Daoism philosophy and the worldview, why unity has this desire to separate?
Right. Because there would be no life, there would be no movement if there wasn't polarity. If everything was just oneness all the time, if there's no difference from you and me, which ultimately there is no difference between you and me, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. We wouldn't be having this journey of self-discovery. We wouldn't be living this life, right? So we need to forget ourselves. And I'm pretty sure Alan Watts talks about this a lot. We need to forget ourselves in order to rediscover what we are. And that's really the trajectory of history, is that's another Tai Chi. The body and the mind have to separate into polarity. So most people go their entire life, not even knowing where their spleen is, not knowing what their kidneys do or what they look like or where they're going. Their attention, which in Taoism we call your Yi, it's spelled Y-I. It's an extremely important concept in Taoism. So if I'm looking at your face, I'm focusing on your face, I'm putting my E in your face. And if I'm following my finger with my eyes, that is my E. So it's your single point of attention. And we do this all the time. We can focus on object. Once I put my E in an object, it starts telling me information about that object. So for most of us, as soon as we wake up to when we go to bed, our E is outside of the body, right? So our mind, our attention is always outside of the body. And there's a phrase in Daoism, it's called Yin Qi, which just means, where intention goes, energy flows. That's literally what that means. So if our intention from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep is outside of the body, where is our energy going? It's leaving the body, usually into our cell phones, usually into what we're doing for work or TV or whatever. And so our mind is always separate from the body. We lose track of the body, and the body just becomes an object for the mind to use to obtain what it wants from the outside world. If we want to do this science of the invisible, the first step to take, and if you take nothing away from this interview and you don't want follow up on anything relating to Taoism whatsoever, if you want to embark on the Taoist path, the most important fundamental thing, if you do nothing else, is to bring the E inside of the body. And when we do that, we find that there are specific places inside of the body energetically that are designed to hold this E, hold this attention, and that certain things happen when we invest these points, these areas inside of our body with that attention. When we begin to do that, instead of the energy flowing out, the energy begins to flow in. And then we begin the process of awakening our bioelectric, bioenergetic bodies. And it is this invisible counterpart to the visible body of blood and bone and sinews and all that we're used to. In Daoism and all the Daoist arts, we use the invisible body or the bioelectric body. And this body comes to life once we bring our E out of the external world and start to bring it inside of the body. So that's the first step to embark on this. And then we bring back to unity this separation, this polarity between mind and body. As we bring the mind back into the body and create unity, bring the mind and the body back into unity. But the missing term between the body and the mind is Qi, is energy. So the body and the mind speak completely different languages. The body does not understand English, but the one language that they both can speak, that they can begin to relate again, is energy. So if the mind understands energy, then it's speaking the body's language. And then when they can both speak the same language, then gradually they start to come back to oneness, to unity.
How do you cultivate that energy language, placing the point of attention inwards? And is that through meditation and practices like Qigong and the body movements? How does one start looking inwards and learning the language of energy?
Well, this is my primary teaching, because having practiced Qigong and martial arts for, 18, 19 years, it was only relatively recently, like maybe in the past five years, that I really discovered the root of all these Taoist practices. So if you think of the Tao as a tree, and you think of the branches of that tree, most of us are familiar with at least one or two of the branches of that tree. So martial arts, Tai-Chi, you have Qigong, you have acupuncture, you have Chinese astrology, you have Feng Shui. These are the branches of the Taoist tree, but all those branches share the same trunk. And usually that trunk is not taught unless you've stuck with whatever branch. You start with the branches and then eventually you find the trunk of that tree. I start with the trunk once I discovered it. And so the trunk of this Taoist tree, the thing that all these branches have sprung out of, and that is common to all of them, is what's called Neidan, which means, it's translated as inner elixir, but really it means inner alchemy. It's working with the invisible human body. So once we activate and become conscious of the invisible body, then we can start to cultivate it and work with it, use the human body, use the power, the bioelectric power of the human body, and apply it in all these different ways, which represent the branches. But first, really, we have to activate our bioelectric body and our bioelectric anatomy first. And so once I discovered that, it unlocked access to all the branches. So that is my primary teaching, is how exactly that. How do we unlock the incredible potential of the invisible bioelectric body that most people spend their lives being completely ignorant of? Firstly, that involves an understanding what the human body is from a bioelectric perspective, and then how to empower that body. How it's made out of energy, it's your energy body, so how can we maximize the energy in that body? So that's what I teach. That's what Inner Elixir is. And whatever you want to do with that energy is your Dao. That's up to you. So I don't teach one system. I don't just teach Tai Chi. I don't just teach Qigong. I have access to all these tools. And what gives me the most joy is discovering what someone's Dao is, what superpowers are unlocked once they start to cultivate energy. Because in order to unlock those superpowers, you need to unlock energy, and everyone has different superpowers, but you only get to discover what they are once you begin to awaken this hidden aspect to life, to human. So I don't prescribe any of that. I wait to see what emerges from someone's Dao, and then I have access to a myriad of tools to help them to find what aspect of the Dao is most appropriate for their life trajectory. Mine was completely unexpected, the superpowers when they, being facetious, I say superpowers, but they are superpowers. When you discover, there's nothing like discovering all these abilities that have lain dormant our entire lives because we've been ignorant of this invisible science of the body. So what came online for me was not in any book I read. It was not in any teacher that taught me anything. They were complete surprises. And then I had to kind of, what is this? What's going on? And it took me very far off these kind of traditional practices. And that's why, for me, it's so exciting to teach this, because a lot of those practices that we associate with Daoism from China are actually the footprints that the Dao left throughout history, through when it was kind of marching across China. It left a trail of all these amazing practices, but it's always changing, always renovating itself. So now when we do these practices, when we invest our intention inside of the body, a lot of the things that will come online are very different from what came online hundreds of years ago in ancient China. And that's what's exciting. That's what gives like the sense of discovery and something new, because energy has shifted, since then. And so now that what the Tao is awakening in people is far different than it is back then. We can follow those footsteps to help us bring us to the Tao. And when we do that, we connect tradition with the future. So we're not leaving tradition behind. We are bringing it, we're making it more relevant again by connecting it with the future. But now, just because things have changed, the abilities that we're able to awaken are far different and far more, not more amazing, but they're just incredible than what they were in ancient China.
I can see that as an evolution.
Yes.
Like you're standing on the shoulders of giants. Someone had to walk the path so you can walk further along.
Exactly. So we follow their footsteps, but then we go further because the Tao has gone further since then. And we need to, if we're trying to hunt a creature, we follow footsteps, but then we find it. So we know where it's been, but now we're trying to follow where it's going. Yeah, exactly.
Someone I interviewed, they compared the Zen Buddhism meditation practices, comparing them to hunting. Because when you're sitting in an upright posture with your eyes, maybe like the Buddha pictured with eyes slightly open.
Yes.
In this kind of peaceful position. Those of you watching might see the demonstration. But it's kind of tracking. You're tracking an animal. You're standing as still as possible. And you're tracking an animal, which is your higher consciousness. You're doing the Tao, the energy, the inner elixir. I feel that that's what you're referring to.
Yes.
And it is in that tracking position when you're just in observation and you wait for it to show up. And I thought,
precisely. Yes.
it just like came up.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you should mention Zen, because not many people know this. And it's another thing that for whatever reason hasn't translated into the Western mindset, like, the Tai Chi symbol. Qigong was discovered, channeled, invented by the same person that brought what would become Zen Buddhism to China. So this was Bodhidharma, who in the 500s AD of our era, came from India to China, specifically to the Shaolin Temple, which at that point was not a bunch of bald people practicing martial arts. It was some Chinese people that were trying to practice Buddhism, but they were doing it in a way that was very detrimental to their health. They were all wasting away. They kind of had a very basic understanding of Buddhism, which was that it was overcoming the body. So the body's this ugly meat bag that has to be transcended. And so everyone was sick and ailing away. And so when Bodhidharma came and he witnessed this, he famously meditated in front of a wall for 9 years and then came up with the very first Qigong textbooks. That's what came out of his 9-year meditation. And one of them is called something like the Brainwashing Bone Marrow Classic. So these were the first Qigong manuals, because he realized that in order to truly transcend transcend this plane of existence, we need power. We need power that comes from the body. We can't go around the body. We have to go through the body. So we actually need to be very healthy and very alive in order to cultivate the rocket fuel, which is the Qi, that can allow us to really make contact with higher worlds and truly escape. So we're not around the body by letting it waste away, but through. And then he went on to found Chan Buddhism, which when it reached Japan became Zen. It puts radical emphasis on lived experience. So nobody, and this is something that I really try to keep at the core of my approach to teaching Daoism, is that nobody can tell you what your Dao is. There's no teacher that can, or practice that will, nobody can tell you what that is. It is entirely unique to you. But we only wait for it to emerge. We make space for it to emerge. And that all these tools, all these, inner elixir, breathing exercises, Qigong, those are just tools in order to help your spirit emerge. And then you're on your own. Then you're going to start to channel your own practices, just like all these ancient practices. They didn't invent them. They reached a certain point of the Tao where they were allowed to receive these teachings from their higher self. And that's when things get exciting, right? So this is to sit back and allow your inner self to emerge, and what that will be entirely unique to you. It does not exist anywhere out there in the universe. So that to me is the core principle of Daoism and what connects it with Zen Buddhism. We always want to project the past onto the future. We need to hijack or short circuit that process in order to truly arrive in the present moment. And that's where the Tao is. That's when it's going to just surprise you, one thing after the other.
And it is through a series of, would you say, inquiry, when you teach, you ask people questions, as well as recommendation of certain practices rooted in Daoism and Zen Buddhism and in Qigong. So it's a combination of that, and it's because what you said is both surprised me and didn't surprise me, which when you said that nobody can give you your Dao, nobody can tell you what your Dao is. It needs to be experienced and embodied.
Exactly.
But as a teacher, and a question arises in my mind, but how do you, what is the approach to teaching people to walk the path? You kind of like hold them by the hand, or you give them the map, but then they need to walk themselves.
Exactly. So in order to awaken, I alluded before to something magical that happens when yin and yang are balanced, when your awareness of the visible and invisible world are equal. Then you can see both sides of reality, that unlocks something very special. So when yin and yang are balanced in your body, then your Shen, your true spirit, can descend and reside in your body. So for most people, their Shen, or their spirit, is their higher self, or their guardian angel, or whatever you want to talk about it or refer to it as. And it exists up in heaven. And for the most part, it only comes down and has an impact on your life when you're about to do something so stupid, or you're about to kill yourself or kill someone else, that would short circuit your evolutionary. We're allowed to make all sorts of mistakes on our journey of self-discovery, but if those mistakes would be so bad that it would kill ourselves or others,
jeopardize the body that is the vessel needed to reach the point,
then it will, in emergency situations, will come down and activate you and kind of take over yourself. And a lot of people that have been in car accidents, or I've experienced this myself, when I'm about to do something that would jeopardize me, and then suddenly something kind of takes over my body and prevents me from doing that thing, right? So people only really experience their Shen. If some people don't even have that much of a connection with the Shen, so it won't even prevent them from doing something stupid. They're so disconnected from it. But most people, that is when they experience it, or when they're in the depths of despair, some kind of extreme place. But if we do the work to balance yin and yang, we have equal understanding of the eternal, invisible, energetic body, as well as the finite meat bag that we all live in. Then our Shen can descend from heaven and enter our body and reside in the heart. And that's when we're living out our destiny. That's when we've aligned with our Tao, and we're no longer living for our life just for our self-interest as myself, Lou, or you, Laura. We are now connecting with what we call the macrocosm, which is the all. And we're living in alignment, not just with our own particular life, particular community, but in alignment with the all. You're living for the universe. And therefore, there's no friction or difference between your personal self-interest and the interest of the whole, of the all. And that's a situation then that we call Wu Wei, or effortless effort. Because when we do something, the entire universe is doing it through us. When we don't do something, the entire universe is quiescent. We call it effortless because there's no friction, there's no difference between our individual desires and needs and wants and that of the whole. And then where there's no friction, we just flow through life like a river, and that is the Tao. When the microcosm, I've talked about the Tai-Chi between heaven and earth. There's another Tai-Chi, which is the furthest without, the macrocosm, or the world, and the deepest within, or the microcosm. And so, you can see on my hat, that's the Wuji. That's the counterpart of the Yin Yang symbol.
a unity.
That's right. So the furthest without and the deepest within.
So it's a circle and a dot.
Exactly.
And also those of you who are just listening.
Yeah. It's the sun symbol, ancient symbol that has for relatively the same meaning no matter what culture it is. But so we have heaven and earth. Here we have the macrocosm and the microcosm. So that's another thing we want to bring back into unity, where there's no difference, no separation between myself as an individual and the world as a whole. That's something that happens when we activate the energy body. The physical world is a world of separation. Our physical bodies are separate. We're two different people. But energetically, there's a continuity between us. My skin does not represent a barrier or a separation from inner and outer. So, and we can only achieve that oneness and connection with all life through our energy body. We need to cultivate that, right? So the physical body is the body of separation. The energy body is the body of unity, but they both exist at the same time. It's not one or the other. They exist in dynamic unity, which makes life possible.
Would you say that when someone becomes aware or channels the Yuan Shen, is when this kind of the life purpose, the direction emerges? So when those who are feeling lost, if they're able through different practices and teachings and guidance achieve that point, is that the clarity comes.
Yes.
Like, oh, this is what my calling is. This is what my gift to the world is.
Yes. And that's your life purpose. We call it your destiny, or your Ming. And not many people know this, but your destiny is actually stored in your kidneys.
Really?
Yeah.
How come?
Your kidney.
Questions about kidney stones now. I was like, wow, what's the story there?
Well, this is what, when I say in Daoism that the body is like the Bible, but each organ, each part of the body also has a invisible energetic function, which often is the upside down, inside out version of its physical function. And not only that, but because the body works with three primary octaves of energy. So if you think of like energy as a wave, the base frequency would be the lower function, which is what the body from the solar plexus down, the belly, everything in there, we're talking as the energetic counterpart. It's largely designed to store this base frequency of qi. We call that jing qi. That's the raw material of qi. So if you want to do any alchemy, we need an abundance of raw material. Just if you want to make furniture or anything, you need lots and lots of wood, right? So it's just the raw, uncultivated energy. That's the kind of base frequency of qi. Then if we look at the body from the solar plexus to the neck, if we have an abundance of this raw, base frequency qi, then we could start to work with the middle frequencies. And we call that qi proper, or vitality. And now we're working with our lower danchen, with the lowest vibration of energy, we're really working with bodily health, right? So first we want enough qi to have a highly functioning body. That's what Bodhidharma discovers, that we need to have a healthy body. That's our first task in our evolution, the qi that gives us a healthy body. Then when we move into the middle what we call the danchen, or elixir field, the second octave of qi. Then once we have a vibrantly abundant, healthy body, we have even extra qi beyond that, then we could start to cultivate and refine our emotions. So that's the next octave above just physical, energetic health, bodily health. I don't ever get sick as a Daoist, which is true. I never get sick. Never get parasites, never get colds. It's just one of the side effects of this practice. But then beyond that, you begin to develop what we call de, or virtue. So each organ has its own virtue. The kidneys have their own virtue. The lungs have their own virtue. If they are dysfunctional in that virtue, then they will store negative emotions. But our emotions don't come from the brain, they come from the body, as we've discovered in Daoism over thousands of years. So the kidneys, when they're physically healthy and energetically healthy, and they become emotionally healthy, and they start to cultivate the emotion or the virtue of gentleness and patience. With the lungs, if they're physically and energetically healthy, and there's abundant qi for more cultivation, they start to develop the virtue of courage, right? So each organ has this virtue. And then finally, once we have cultivated de, which is what the Dao De Jing,
and is it the upper body?
Yeah, now we're talking about the head. Mm-hmm. The upper danchen. Then we're talking about the highest frequency, and that's the frequency of spirit. Jing means essence, Qi means vitality, and Shen means spirit. These are the three treasures of Daoism, the three primary octaves of energy that the body has access to and can work with. And when we're working with the upper danchen, then we're working with power. So each organ has its own power. And that means that we have cultivated the energy body to the extent that we can actually manipulate the external world with our internal energy. For the most part, we are manipulated by the external world. We conform to our cultural, social standards. So we are fitting into a big machine. But if we step out of that machine and cultivate our own energy, then eventually we have complete power over the macrocosm. That means manifestation, that means magic. But we don't get access to that power unless we have cultivated sufficient virtue with the middle danchen, the middle section of the body from the solar plexus to the neck, to use that power in a way that will not create problems, right? Because our will is aligned with the whole. So that's the Daoist journey. It's from health to virtue to power. And we can't skip any steps. We have to start at the bottom and work our way up. And that the body encodes the spiritual journey. It's simply by following the body, by letting the body speaks and allowing it to take us on this journey from the physical to the eternal. We follow the body. We don't follow any doctrine or any way of being, but we do let the body express itself and take us to our destiny, our true self, our Yuan Shen.
What I'm hearing is that it's an invitation to strengthen your physical health, start with the absolute basics.
Yeah.
And then as you're gaining strength in your physical body, that enables you to start exercising that emotional muscle and look at any gunk that kind of got stored from the years of living the human experience.
Exactly.
Look at it, have the strength, and develop further. And as you clear it out, or at least get acquainted with what it is, that you're able to tap into and understand your calling, your inner purpose, your intuition, and that goes into more of a power space. Is that a helpful analogy?
Yeah, that's perfect. So what I often see in the spirit world, the spiritual world, people want to skip the body. They want to go straight to power. They want to go straight to, connecting with higher beings, or, going down the rabbit hole or rabbit holes. And you can and using medicines or substances to get you there, which is fine. And it's tempting because we want to run away. Yeah, we want to run away from, our health problems. But in Taoism, we don't go towards the light. We go towards the darkness, because that is our alchemical base. That's what we want to transform. So whatever your diseases are, whatever your sicknesses are, whatever your physical challenges are, the way to spirit is not away from them, but going into them. Because we see that every physical challenge is the manifestation, is the representation of a spiritual thing. But we were never going to discover what that spiritual issue is if we ignore how it's manifesting, how it's showing up on the physical plane or on the lower energetic plane. So that's where we have to address the problem. And within the body, it's always within the body. That is something that we can change. We can't change the universe. We can't, as much as people want to, but we can change. So we want to go, so the path, the Taoist path, is not the parts of your life that are amazing or spiritual or connected. The path is to follow your problems, is to look at your physical issues. And the more you invest your in those, and it's not easy. I came to this path because of a traumatic, extremely traumatic childhood. So my body had all this trauma inside of it to the point where it caused like a crippling physical collapse that laid me out for 9 months. I lost my job. I lost everything. And it was like, I was in my mid-20s, and I thought my life was over, that I was going to be a cripple. But that was my initiation on the Taoist path. It brought my attention to all this trauma that I was storing in my body so I could release it and transmute it into power. And it was by going into my injury, going into the trauma, seeing it for what it is, which was energy. And the more I looked at it, the more I invested my into, the injury was just my body calling my back into my body. And that's so if this mind is always separate from the body on a daily basis, eventually the only way for the body to get the mind's attention is through pain and sickness. But it's trying to bring your attention to things that can only truly be healed by investing your attention into it. Doctors can only do so much. Nothing has the healing potential of simply bringing your awareness inside of your body. And the way your body gets the attention of your mind is through sickness or injury.
That's almost like another invitation to sit in meditation on that pain and then just be fully present with the discomfort of course, none of it can be or should be qualified as a medical advice. So if someone is considering change to their physical practices, consult with the practitioner. What I'm taking away for myself is that if I'm experiencing pain and discomfort, I need to meditate and sit and really inquire, journal. Like, these are the practices that I use for the self-inquiry to bring the attention from the outside within.
Precisely.
Well, what is why this part of my body is not functioning?
Yes. Yeah. And that will lead you on a journey of the Tao, because so with this injury, the more I had to lie down and just feel where what was going on inside of my body, and would go from place to place. And eventually it started to unravel all the trauma, because trauma is stuck energy. It's Qi that's not flowing. So when there's an emotion or an experience that's so overwhelming that you can't confront it or deal with it at the moment, then your body will store it. And it'll typically store it in your lower dantian, in your belly, below your solar plexus. It's like landfill. It's like putting all the garbage, and it puts a lid on it and waits for you for a time when you have the qi, the ability, the strength to transmute it. But if you have an experience that you don't have the qi or the power to transmute it or change it, then your body tucks it down, stores it, waiting for a time in the future that you have the ability to heal it. And for most people, that time never comes. They just pack all their traumas in their belly. And if their qi is doing nothing but storing traumatic experiences, then it can never, then that's all it ends up doing. It will never be able to do anything beyond just protecting you from unpleasant emotions. It's waiting for you to invest your E. That's what, it's your E that makes the qi flow. It's your awareness that tells the mind tells energy where to go. And if you bring your mind inside of the body, then it will start to initiate the alchemical process that will turn all that trauma into power. Because when that qi is no longer stuck with holding on to this unpleasant experience, then it can start to do all sorts of other things, which is activate your superpowers. So that's the Taoist path, is the easiest path, because all it involves is breathing and paying attention. And the entire universe comes to your aid when you do that. But the price you pay in order to activate and fully awaken your bioelectric body is that you have to witness and go back into all your trauma. Every single one of them has to be cleared and brought to the surface, brought to your awareness, brought to consciousness, so you can transmute that trauma, which is stuck qi, into power, which is moving qi. So it's the easiest and the hardest path, because you can't skip any steps. There's no spiritual bypassing possible. So you're always kind of looking, what is the density? You're not looking up to the skies, you're looking down at the density to transmute it. So it's very different. It's a kind of like like I keep saying, upside down, inside out version of what most of us look to with spirituality. We're looking at the darkness first. We're not escaping anything, because the Tao is the whole. We're looking at both sides of things, right? Not just the light, not just the happy part, but the dark part. In fact, we want to put more effort into the dark part to transmute it into light. The darkness is rocket fuel, it's power, it's energy waiting to be unleashed. So that's what I call false light, which is the light that you can indulge in by kind of
Good vibes only.
repressing. And so in order to have that false light, we need to either repress the darkness. So that means keeping it under Dan Shen. And we can only repress it for so long. It's going to come to the surface one way or the other. Or projecting it onto other people. So we repress it in or project it out. So it's those bad people over there, it's all their fault, et cetera, et cetera. So in Taoism, we don't do that. We are connected with everything. We are connected with everything that goes outside, in the outside world is a reflection of what's within, and vice versa. And then by going into the darkness and transmuting into light, just like, gasoline, it's darkness, dead dinosaurs, but it's highly flammable and creates power. It makes cars go, it makes things happen. So it's the same thing. We look at the darkness, we transmute it, and then we create true light. And that's a light that is eternal. It will last forever. It will never run out. It will only get stronger and stronger and stronger over time, rather than weaker and weaker and weaker, which is what happens when we skip steps, when we avoid things, when we practice spiritual bypassing by repression or projection.
Well, there are two things that spring to mind. First is that I think it's Carl Jung that said that the unresolved trauma becomes destiny, or like the suppressed subconscious becomes destiny.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then you just have to live it out multiple lifetimes until you're able to look at it, develop the ability to look at it. That's one thing. And then another one is more of a personal view, because I'm fascinated by darkness. Like the way that I look is just like, that's where the treasures lie. Like,
yes,
get out.
Absolutely.
And the way that I look at it is also soil, like a dark soil of the earth, because certain things should have died in order for the fertile soil to grow a tree.
Precisely.
You need to dig it, you need to oxygenate it, you need to give it light, you need
Absolutely.
to give it attention in order for something to grow, go deep with the with hands covered in dirt and mud and soil
Exactly.
to really plant a tree to grow something beautiful out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the way. And then the tree dies, and then there goes the never-ending circle of life.
Exactly.
That's the way that I was. So that personally, I'm fascinated by darkness. Like, no, give it. I want to know everything that it hides, so I'm aware, so I know. So I'm not a slave to my subconscious. I'm not a slave to my past. And
Precisely. Exactly. And when you bring light into your life, what the first thing it does is that it shines upon the darkness. You get to see what's there. So for me, when I had that injury and I was forced to lie down, and I just started to cultivate Qi. And as soon as you have enough energy to process a trauma, that's immediately what will happen. It brought to consciousness all the trauma from my childhood, all the stuff that I had been spending my entire life trying to run away from, but always coming back down into it, never being able to escape it. But eventually, once with my injury, I literally couldn't escape it. I had the power, the energy, finally necessary to really witness something that if I did not have that, I would have spent my entire life running away from. But then once I looked at it, once I invested my E inside my body and started to unravel all my trauma, it turned it into power. A power which I would never have experienced or known if I had been given the luxury of avoiding my trauma for my entire life, which most people, if they could get away with it, that's what they would do. So your power is in your trauma. Your weakest aspects are your strongest aspects. So motto of Tai Chi, of martial arts, is from great yin comes great yang. So from great weakness or great darkness comes the greatest power, the greatest light. And that's where we search for it. We search for it in the darkness, not in the light.
I think, but what I'd like to ask one more question, more towards the benefit of the audience, is that any guidance you can give them in that path of sitting with a trauma, or digging into the darkness, or pursuing and reading, exploring their potential for their Dao, anything that's kind of the insights that you can share, or maybe words of support. I think maybe there are some people listening to it that are going through this journey, and they're not even understanding where that pain, whether emotional or physical, are coming from.
Right. Well, I'll just kind of give you the first thing that I teach, like the core of my teaching. It's very simple. I mentioned that there's parts inside of the body that once we turn the E, we bring the attention out of the external world and bring it into the internal world. We find that there's places that are designed to hold that attention. And the primary one, which is familiar to anyone that's kind of done any Qigong or Tai Chi or anything, we call the lower Danchen. We're talking about not your physical body, but your energy body, below your solar plexus, your belly. If it's cleared of trauma and empty, then it will store this Jing Qi, this raw base frequency energy.
The wood
Yeah.
to build a house.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Or the wheat or whatever. You'll have an abundance of it. And the first thing your body will use it for is for physical health. But I also said that that's where your body stores your trauma, because it's such a powerful, energetic source that we don't have access to that power, because that's where we store all our trauma. So the first step for any Daoist practice, we say Yi Shou Dan Tian, which means Yi, your attention, Shou, sink. So not out, but in, not out, but in and down. Sink it into your lower Danchen, your belly. And once we do that, we find there's like the equivalent of an energetic throne room or armchair for your E, that there's a little space there that's designed to hold your attention. And by bringing your upper Danchen, your upper brain, into your lower brain, you activate your body brain. Your lower Danchen is your body brain. So for any practice, Tai Chi, in the Taoist practices, we don't work with the body in a fragmentary way. So if I want to pick this up, I'm just using my arm. If I'm doing any Taoist movements like Tai Chi or any martial art, then my body moves as a whole. So if one arm goes up, one arm goes down, my arms are connected. And that grand central station where the whole body achieves unity, what we call the one Qi, that is your body brain. That's your lower Danchen. The absolute primary first step to doing this invisible science of Daoism is to take your awareness away from your five senses in the outer world and to sync them all. You look towards your dantian with your eyes. You listen to it with your ears. You taste it with your mouth. You smell it with your nose. You bring all your senses into your inner world, and that will start to awaken the infinite capacity your body has to heal, to awaken and activate and create movement inside of your body. So that's the first step. So look with your eyes. You look, obviously, like I said.
Mind's eye with your eyes closed.
Right, exactly. Just like I said, every organ has an external physical function and has an internal energetic function. So when we want to move energy around of our bodies, we use our eyes. So if I want to bring the energy to my heart, I look at my heart. Obviously, I'm not seeing it, but my eyes tell the energy where to go. My eyes direct my E where to go. So you look at your lower dantian and breathe. Breathe from that point. So when you're breathing with your body brain, with your lower dantian, you're not just breathing physical air, you're breathing qi as well, because your lower body holds all the secrets of the invisible world. Our middle dantian, that's how we interact with the physical world. So we breathe in physical air through the physical mouth, into our physical lungs to oxygenate our physical blood, which gets pumped to the heart. The lower dantian, we breathe not just air, but we breathe qi. The body also breathes qi from the invisible world. And we breathe qi through the anus, the opposite end of the mouth. And we breathe with invisible energy with the kidneys. The kidneys are your qi lungs, right? So they can breathe qi, and they collect it not in your heart, but in your dantian, where it gets pumped not through the blood vessels and arteries of your body, but through the meridians and energetic channels that we're familiar with from acupuncture. So this part of your body, this from the solar plexus down, corresponds to the water world, the invisible world. So when you bring your attention and you breathe, expanding out from the abdomen and condensing in, that is the first steps to awakening the secret bioelectric capacities of the human body. And it will just naturally over time, if you do it for 5 minutes every day, or anytime you're not doing something, just bring your awareness into your dantian and breathe. Start concentrating on breathing qi. But day by day by day, you're going to start to awaken your bioelectric body and awaken all these incredible abilities that the bioelectric body has to heal and to transmute trauma into power. And that's what I teach. That's the core of my teaching. And it goes on from there, it just builds on from there. That is the trunk of the Daoist tree. What emerges from that process, what powers come online, what superpowers come online, I can't tell you what that is. That will only happen through life experience. But I can give people tools because I have access to a little bit of all the branches to help them go further along their path. And we're all used to this type. We all know this breathing. This is how we breathed in the womb. We didn't breathe air through the lungs. We breathed through the umbilical cord. We breathed amniotic fluid, which is that's why this is called back to childhood breathing. That amniotic fluid in the womb was the physical counterpart to the womb of qi that we live in at all times. So that umbilical cord is like we still are connected to that womb, that energetic womb that surrounds us, that the outside of the circle, the macrocosm. It's full of energy, infinite energy. There's absolutely no limit to the amount of energy we could access from heaven and earth. The only limit is our bandwidth, how much qi that our body can hold. And our bandwidth increases when we transmute our traumas and release those blockages and those knots. Then we can take more power, and there's no end to the amount of power and energy we could get from the universe. And that more power will then heal more traumas, more blockages, and that is the Daoist path. So that's what I would recommend. Isho, my original teacher who cured me, who helped me heal from this injury, he barely spoke any English, but he would always say, tongue on roof, shoulders balanced, focus dantian. So just do that every day. Just bring your E into your dantian, find that little armchair throne room for your body brain, and then your body will reveal all the secrets of the Tao, because they're all contained in your body. They're not in any teaching or practice. I mean, those help, but but it's your body that contains all the secrets of the universe and all the healing power in the universe. And this is how you activate it.
I was listening to you talking about it, and I noticed my attention is that part of my body, and I think you might have maybe noticed in my face, you blew my mind a little bit when I just realized it's like, yeah, umbilical cord, like this is how we get the energy, the food, everything as children, and it goes right to the area of our bodies. That really, I love having my mind blown.
That's what I'm here to do. Yeah, totally. So it's full circle. We go from the womb, we go on this journey of separation, but then back to the macrocosmic womb, which is invisible. It's energetic. And we're training the energy we're not going out to get things. We're training the energy to flow towards us. And so then the universe will give us everything we need. Money, love, everything. It's here to serve us. It's not our enemy. We don't have to fight to get things from it. We just have to align with it, and it will bring us everything we need. I haven't had to, worry about money for years and years and years, because the energy is flowing. I've created space in my body, and it flows in, and that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the effortless effort. Yeah.
Lugh, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and teachings and approaches and tips that I've learned a lot. So I'm looking forward to editing it as well.
Yeah.
That's like, it enables me to relive it and really listen to the details.
Yeah.
Thank you for this. How can our listeners, viewers can find more about work that you do? Are you online? Any socials? Of course, I will leave it all in the show notes, but please, how can people find you?
So I'm on the cusp of putting my teachings online. I've held a number of retreats, so I have very detailed illustrated handouts. Basically, my goal is to show people how to follow this path without making the same mistakes that I made, without having to be crippled for 9 months. And so over time, I've really crystallized that into some basic practices that I've taken from a bunch of things that I've either been taught or read about or just experienced myself, to find the fastest, safest way to begin this path. In the meantime, you can look at my Facebook page, which is Bianhua, and you can email me if you want any of my handouts or any of the material that I've made at lugh.whittall@gmail.com. That's Lugh, L-U-G-H. So weird spelling. It's like Hugh, but with an L. .Whittall, W-H-I-T-T-A-L-L @gmail.com. Bianhua means transformation in Chinese. So that mysterious point, that singularity, when extreme yin turns into extreme yang and vice versa, that point of extremes transforming into their opposite, that's called the Bianhua.
Is that where the point of the greater polarity? Is that?
So when the Tai-Chi is at its maximum polarity and it can't separate any further, and so then it comes back into
point.
that is the Bianhua point. And then when that that unity comes, and then it separates, like when you create a child or an other.
And that's the Uji.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lugh.
Yeah, there you go. Food for thought.
And to those of you who have tuned in today, thank you so much for watching or listening to another episode of On Emergence. I invite you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is a free way to support the work, and listen to any other platform of choice and leave a review up to 5 stars if you feel that you've derived a lot of benefit from this episode. And once again, it's been a pleasure to hold your attention today. My name is Laura Sagan. I'm your host and a fellow human. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.